So I'm going to start by introducing myself. Hi, everyone. If you don't know me by now, I'm not sure where you've been. My name is Jess Amo. I am the founder of NoCode Techies. I we started NoCode Techies now, I think 3 years ago. And since then, we've been working with all of you in the community, providing information, insights, tips, and tricks on how to navigate the transition into the tech space as people who are non-coders. On my day job, I work as a product marketing manager for a company called Keyloop, and I'm really happy to be here. Um, I will now pass it on to Dara.
I knew I was going to be next.
You're next on my screen.
Thank you very much, Jess. Hello, everyone. Hope we're doing well. My name is Dara Ahmed. I'm a tech commercial expert. What that means is I lead business development and sales for tech companies. Currently, I do that for a cross-border payment company. Aside that, I am the founder of Tech Sales and Partnerships Community. So it's a nonprofit for people who are interested in tech commercial roles, business development, partnerships, and the likes, to get job opportunities, connect with other people as well, get mentorship, all of the good stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to be here, and it's really nice to be with everyone. I look forward to, speaking to more people on the call later on.
Awesome. Who are you going to ask to speak next?
Oh, I nominate Emmanuel, definitely. Emmanuel has been my
Oh, that's coming for you.
Hi guys, how's everyone doing? Great. So I'm Emmanuel. I'm a senior product designer at Oyster. Um, what does a product designer do? So I basically design digital products or software that address user needs and solve problems basically for businesses. So a little bit of history about myself. I started designing when it was pretty much undervalued in Ghana, right? But as a result of that, I had to look for progressive startups that I could demonstrate the business impact that design has. And since then, I have led the design of HRIS products that have safeguarded millions in government spending. And now at Oyster, I design products that help people or professionals to be hired anywhere in the world. Apart from that, I also lead design at Mandy, which is at Mandy, we are building an AI-enabled career companion for professionals and students. When I'm not designing Mandy, I am leading design at a playing field. It's a design partner for startups who want to move from nothing to one. So one basically here being MVP. If you don't catch me designing, I'm somewhere in the music space managing artists. Yeah.
And be a musician yourself.
Hopefully.
Thank you very much for that, Irma. And that brings us to Joel. Joel, tell us a bit about yourself, a bit about your background, and yeah, anything you want to share.
Hi everyone, Joel here, one of the very confused fellas. Say confused because I've transitioned careers like 4 times throughout my 10 years of working. I started my career as a pharmacist and got bored along the line, moved into tech, did recruitment and a lot of that. Probably you hear that when we have our breakout sessions. But today I build products at a company called AxMed. So bringing my pharmacy knowledge to bear, we aggregate demand across several markets, pharmaceutical demand, so that we can cut down the cost of medications. When you buy things in wholesale, it makes things cheaper or more affordable. Outside that was while I lead product on Monday. We did career coaching. My team and I did career coaching for years, and we are now putting that together into Monday, which creates like a straight path to employability. We are focusing on students for now, but then eventually we'll expand. I work with Ima as well, so like we're a team. And also I was with Jess on the same scholarship in the UK. That's actually how I just an achievement scholarship, a well-coveted achievement scholarship. I don't joke with it at all. And now I met Dara too on this like project in Gesto as well. So pretty much that's all about me. I mean, there's more. And as we move along in the conversation, you're probably gonna discover that.
Perfect. Thank you so much
Cheers.
for sharing. That's really awesome. Yes, I met Emmanuel working at Oyster. I met Joel through the scholarship, and I met Dara because Dara runs another Kickers community like NoCode Techies, and it's really nice to connect to people in the space like that. As we keep going, you learn more about them, but also in the breakout rooms, you will even get to know more as you work with the individual speakers on the various disciplines that they do in tech. So quickly, what's going to happen today is I'm going to give a short address about what's happening in the tech space and how you could stand out and thrive even in the face of that. And then we're going to have a quick panel discussion about job search right now, what is looking like, and how AI is making a play in that space. And then we're going to break out into workshops and then come back for announcement, general Q&A. And there's a special announcement at the end that you would not want to miss. So let's get straight into it, right? For those of you who know me or have seen my transition story somewhere, you would know that I started my career in the sales space. I used to do sales. I was regional sales manager for, if you're Ghanaian, for Central and Western region. If you're not, it's not as big as a state, but it's a collection of cities and villages and towns. And there's like one of them is a region, and so two of them I used to manage for an FMCG brand. And now I work as a product marketing manager. But also all along that line, I've been transitioning myself, looking for work, looking for jobs, successfully landed really good jobs, but also helped other people make their own transitions. And I've realized that there is a lot of similarity or a lot of tips and tricks that we could all learn from salespeople in our job search process. It's a joke that me and Joel say a lot of times about, if you're in Ghana, you've heard this term about Takashi. And there's a thing about just being very resilient and being very forceful. And it's a characteristic of most salespeople, but it's also a characteristic that can be very relevant when you start to look at how you can approach your job search strategically and tactically. So today I'm just going to talk about in about 5-7 minutes about how we can employ sales tactics in our job search. But before that, let's talk a little bit about what's happening in hiring in tech post-COVID, right? If you go back to maybe 2021, 2022, there was a big boom in hiring, especially cross-border, because COVID brought all of us home. We're all working from home, studying from home. Joel and I were getting our masters, and most of us never went into the classroom because everybody was using the Zooms and the Google Meet and all of those things, right? But if you fast forward to 2023, 2024, there's a lot of RTO mandates, return to office mandates. There's a lot of remote global reducing, and now there's a lot of jobs out there where there's remote but in the UK, remote but here, remote but there. And even though that's all happening, there's still, especially in 2025, been an increase in job postings that are remote compared to how it was in 2023, 2024, when there was this big impending doom of economic down, like the economy going downhill, right? And yet, compared to the general job industry, tech roles seem to get about 51% more applicants per every opening that gets posted than if it was a job in FMCG or if it was a job in the dev world. And what all of that tells us is that there's a higher need to stand out, to differentiate yourself from the masses in a big way if you're trying to land a job that is impactful and meaningful and hopefully in the salary range that you're trying to target or in the role that you're trying to target, right? It's now more than ever very important to make sure that you're standing out. And what ways could we do that? By thinking like salespeople. So the way that sales and job search is parallel is that both are super competitive, especially with what we just talked about, that if you're applying for a job in like a blue collar job or in construction and you're applying for a job in tech, you're dealing with 51% more people applying for that same job that you want than if you were applying for something else. And so the competition is really, really high. And in the sales process, salespeople really go for showing that they can solve their customer's problem. And that's a very similar thing to applying for a job because they're trying to show that you can solve whatever issues that the company had that made them put the job ad in the first place. And again, as you're looking for jobs, it's always the case that if you tackle it with strategy, it's more likely to succeed than if you were doing it without a plan, basically in a disorganized way. And that directly maps onto what salespeople do. But if you wanted to see it in how the process works, salespeople define the kinds of companies, the personas that they want to go for. So the ICP then means ideal customer persona. And for you as a job, as a person looking to get a new job or transition, you define the kind of company that you want to get to. Salespeople do of prospecting. We do prospecting by trying to find the right companies. Companies put out requests for proposals and salespeople submit proposals for those RFPs. We see JDs and we make sure that we submit tailored CVs to get us into that process. Salespeople do outreach and nurture. We do networking and building relationships. And of course, for a salesperson, they wanted to end up in a closed won deal, but sometimes it's closed lost. We wanted to end in an offer and sometimes it ends in a rejection, right? But let's talk about defining an ICP. So there's a few things on there that I won't tackle, like tailoring your CV, like making a proposal and go fully into interviews because we've got so much more resources on NoCode Techies that you could basically go take a look at. But I'll call out a few of the key ones, like defining your ICP, right? One of the best things about you owning the job search process is that it's really your choice what kind of companies you go after. And you can do this by determining what the ideal role for you is. So that obviously will always start with what are the skills that you have that you can bring as a solution, but also what are the interests that you have? What are you trying to do? So like Joel said, he was a pharmacist and now he's building products of pharmacy for the pharmaceutical world, right? Those are skills that he has and interests that he has, and he's brought those two things together. And so he would go for a company like Axmed because that company is the ICP for him. And the next thing then, of course, is what are the company characteristics? Do you want a big company? Do you want a small company? Are you a startup person? Do you want to be a small cog in a huge machine? All of those things you can define. But also, and one thing that I always call out is that, especially now in the age of layoffs, you need to think about how strategic is that role to the company. And does it mean that the company will keep you if they had to make cuts? And then, of course, finally, you need to figure out if there are opportunities available for you, people of your skill sets, people of with the interest that you have in those companies. Now you figured out who you're trying to target from a company perspective. You want to figure out who are you actively going to send CVs to? Where are JDs? Who do you want to reach out to on LinkedIn? Who do you want to speak to? Who do you want to build community with? Salespeople would have a CRM like Salesforce or HubSpot or something, Excel, to track companies that fit the criteria that they've set as a company or as a sales organization. For us, we have very easily, Notion is free. You can create a Notion page, check in all the companies that fit where you're trying to go. You can go more specialized with a tool like Teal, where you can not only put in companies, but you can put in JDs, you can put in contacts in that company, and it will be your own personal CRM where you prospect and shortlist and keep your ideal companies in. I mean, I have my own list of ideal companies that I know that if they're hiring and I'm looking, I would like to target them first. And it's a really good way to strategize your job search process. Of course, there's also good old Excel sheets that we all have access to, Google Sheets or Excel, that you can use as your prospecting tool to make sure that you're targeting companies that fit what you can give from a skills perspective, but also what you want from a company characteristics perspective. And then salespeople do outreach and nurture. In the job search world, you want to do relationship building. So many more hires are getting done through referrals in tech. The comparison between tech and non-tech companies is that 129% of um, referrals leading to hires in tech are 129% more than in any other industry, which means that in tech, if you're not building community, if you're not building a network, you're really doing yourself a disservice. When we saw the icebreaker earlier, most of you said this superpower you're trying to build is networking, and that's a really good thing because if you have that, it's more likely that you're going to be standing out in your job search than not. How can you build relationships? One, through informational interviews, no commitment interviews where you just reach out to people in the space you're trying to get into to ask questions about what does the job look like? How can I get into it? What do I need to do to upskill? Networking, showing up for events like this, right? Joining workshops like this where you can talk to people in the same space as you. And then, of course, you can get referrals from there. So that's the kind of relationship building where you reach out and say, I'm trying to get into your company. Can you give me a referral? And then, of course, application based outreach is applying to people around the role that you're trying to get in. And so the last two are very job search related and application related. But if you do the first two at the beginning, it makes it so much easier for you to do the second two in the process. Some tools you could use. Rocket Reach. I found this when I was trying to change jobs last year, and it's a really good way to enrich um, the info you have about your future hiring manager. Basically, if you put in a person you're trying to reach out to, Rocket Reach will spit out their email address and even sometimes their phone number, but that's creepy. Please don't call them. Um, you can send them an email, a cold email, and it will land directly in their inbox. Of course, LinkedIn. LinkedIn has brought all of us so close to each other that you could literally reach out to the CEO of a company you're trying to get into. But don't do that if you're not actually trying to get to the CEO, but you want your hiring manager. And then, of course, we've got so many templates for you on no-code techies that you could use. We've got cold messaging templates. We've got messages that you can send for referrals and all of that, right? And then let's say you've done all of that right, and now you've landed into the interview. How can you stand out in the interview? Most of the time when we get into an interview process, can we can feel as though we're being done a favor versus feeling as though you're coming in to support this company reach a goal that they want. And so I want you to remember that if you've done all the right things and you've been able to get an interview, you need to treat it as a consultative approach because that's what salespeople do. They come in, try to identify the problems that the customer has, and show them how they can help solve the problem. That's what you're doing as well. The second thing is that you need to come to the interview or that conversation with confidence. If you've done the work of auditing your skills, you've done the work of auditing your interest, you understand what you're bringing, what differentiates you, then show up knowing that, having that in your mind that you know what you're doing. And then, of course, in all your doings, demonstrate value. Demonstrate that you're coming to the company and you're going to hit the ground running and being a positive from day one. Finally, I want to talk about something that's a very big part of the job search process, which is rejections. If you've applied or even landed a job before, you know that before you got that yes, there were many, many no's that came before it. In sales, the benchmark is 15 to 20% close, pitch to deal closure. But in job search, it's 3%. And so you realize that even if you do all the sales tactics, there's still a higher likelihood of rejection than not. And so it's important to understand that yes, a no is impactful, it affects you. Allow that to happen, let that wash over you, but use all the rejections as a redirection onto new paths and not a blockade or a reason to stop trying. Rejection is very normal, but use that to springboard yourself ahead. And I'll leave you with this quote. Your job search is not a lottery ticket, it's a pipeline. So you don't have to sit around waiting and hoping that your number gets called. If you approach it with strategy, persistence, and courage, that one yes that you get after all of the rejection or work and hard work, honestly, it will change everything. If you take nothing out of here today, think of what would a salesperson do in this instance and put that into effect, and it will help you stand out in the job market that we have currently. Thank you so much for listening to me. And now you're going to hear more people speak. Isn't that great? If I can have Dara come up. As well.
Hi, Jess.
Hi. I think it is.
I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Perfect. Okay, great. Just give me 1 minute. Okay, got it. Right. So, thank you all for joining again. We're going to do a quick conversation around the career transitions and basically job searching in the age of AI. AI is taking over the world. Like, we've all heard about it so much now. I think every other LinkedIn post is about how someone has used AI in one way or the other. And we will get to that in this conversation. But before we get to that, I just wanted to do a quick question around the room. You've all made some transitions into the job that you're in right now at some point, right? Can you talk to me about that moment of realizing that you need to make a change, right? Like that you need to stop from being a pharmacist and become like a product manager in tech, or you need to stop from I forget where you were before, Emma, and become a product designer, right? Like when was that aha moment for you, and what precipitated it? And because I do remember where you started before, Emma, I'll start with you.
Okay, so yeah, thank you. Before I got into product design, I was a graphic designer. But the aha moment was I was really just bored. Like, yeah. It got to a point where it had become increasingly difficult for me to explain the rationale behind some of the design decisions that I was making. That's for graphic design. And I think that was because I hadn't really learned graphic design as I should have, and so I was really just winging it.
Mm-hmm.
Then it became a thing of having to explain from a point of sentimentality, and that was a little different from what product design showed me, because at the time when I had gotten bored, I had just started exploring product design as well with my friends. So I would always get they were having all the fun without me, so I wanted to be a part of the fun, and then I picked it up and started learning. But I realized that it got to a point, it was really all I could think about. Before I go to bed, I'm thinking about the next experience. When I wake up, it's the next thing I'm thinking about. So then I realized I had just locked in. at that point for product design because now it had become very easy to back my decisions with logic. So when I'm explaining things to people, I can explain it and then explain it better than I would when I was doing graphic design. So I did a little bit of research, then I realized that product designers actually get paid a lot more than graphic designers. At the time, it wasn't much compared to developers. So I was like, why not? I mean, I don't have to do all the work that graphic asks me to do, and I still get paid better because this feels a lot more natural to me. Then I just picked it up and eventually got through, and now I'm here. So that was like pretty much it for me.
No, that's actually very, very interesting because honestly, I've never heard someone say I was looking for a better reason to do my work, and that's why I changed jobs. But I think that's a very good reason to change, right? If you're not feeling like the rationale behind what you're doing is
Yeah.
aligning with you, then it makes sense to like look for a change. And what a good change you made, right? Like getting
Yeah.
into product design and also progressing in it. Thank you so much for sharing that. Dara, let's hear about you. What was that aha moment for you that made you recognize that you wanted something different?
All right, thanks, Jess. So I think for me, I started my career as a creative, right? I have done a lot of things. I have worked as a copywriter, I have worked as a ghostwriter and made money from literally writing stories for people. I've worked as a fashion designer. I had a brand and I used to make ready to wear dresses for people. And I think at the time I did transition into partnerships because I started with business development and partnerships at the time. It was a survival decision. I wasn't, trying to. In fact, it was pretty heartbreaking for me because it was like, oh, I had to leave what I was truly passionate about. You know how they tell you, how the rich people come and tell you, follow your passion? Sometimes. So I think for me, at the time, it was a survival decision. I didn't know what it entailed, and I was walking with my two legs into fintech, you
Right.
know.
Right.
So it was really tough. I remember at some point I wanted to quit. I wanted to quit sales. I knew I was good with communicating, but sales is a different ball game.
Different.
It was yeah, it's not just being a good communicator. So at some point I wanted to quit, and I remember I had this manager then, Emilia. Emilia helped me see a lot of things. Having a good manager, I will never write that out. I try to be one these days. I'm glad I had good examples to follow through because it literally shaped, how I felt. I saw it as a challenge because I realized, see, this is probably the hardest thing I've done in my life. And it's either I learn this or I choose an easier route. So I could have gone into, at some point, I was thinking, do I just go into UI UX design? I mean, I have the skills, I have an eye for art, I know how to work with colors. It's about learning the basics and then, building from there. But I knew for me, this was a lot tougher. I could have walked away from it because, of course, you follow your passion and whatnot. But I stayed. And it was the best decision I'd ever made because sales is a skill that not only plays out in tech, it's a skill that stays with you. Jess has been talking about the parallel between, selling, the similarities between selling yourself and applying for a job. Every day you sell something, you're selling an idea, you're selling yourself, right? You're selling different things consciously or even subconsciously. So it was the best decision I made. And I think for me, the moment I got my aha moment was talking to more businesses, just staying there a bit more, growing there, talking to more businesses, and actually closing deals that validated the level of growth, that I'd attained. So, and then I realized, come on, this is what I've actually always wanted to do because I've always wanted to be that girl making presentations in companies. And even though I did not know what all of that entailed. So the aha moment for me was truly seeing all of that, materialize into real results and actually seeing that the products I was selling were helping people. And I wasn't just selling, I was creating value for people. So that decided, at that point, I decided I was going to then take steps to build a career in this. And I also did my research as well because I knew there was a point I wanted to transition to product management. So I had to do what, see, if a senior product manager is making X amount, how much would I make if I was leading a business, or a sales team for a big organization? And I realized, this is like we're sitting on a gold mine, and a lot of people do not realize this. And yeah, I decided I was going to pursue this as a career path, grow in it, and not just that, help other people get into it, because it is one skill that has transformed my life as a person generally.
No, I really like that, and I also like the idea around like being in there and then staying, because once you enter tech, you realize that there are many parallel roles that are exciting, and you might want to shift and never really have any focus. So I respect that, and it's true that if you progress in tech, at some point the earning becomes very similar at senior levels, because all of the different roles have very good impact in the company's well-being anyway. And so yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. Um, Joel.
Yeah. So, yeah, I started my career as a pharmacist. I was working behind the counter at a point in time. I love my job so much. I think mostly it's been a case of wanting to stand out. So how I even practice behind the counter was kind of different. Like you come to me, I'm trying to convince you to do something, I'm motivating you, I'm failing, I'm trying to read around how can I get this person, to take this decision. So it was more around that thrill of helping people make decisions. And I think that's moved that got me into going into sales for the most part because I remember my mentor telling me that he thinks everybody should do sales. It feels uncomfortable, but when you think through things, everything is sales. Like day in, day out, you're convincing someone to make a decision, you're influencing someone. And that's why I admire like Dara's work a lot. It's not an easy one. So I got into sales and um, worked for a couple of years, about 3.5 years. But somewhere in the middle, I mean, I'm someone who loves to do a lot of reflection, and I also love to count my privileges. Being the last born of four children, I didn't have a soft life as a last one because I was always the one at home. They were always like away in school, boarding house and stuff. But the privilege here was more around seeing my older siblings make mistakes and making sure I don't repeat those mistakes. And so I always like steps ahead, thinking about okay, what does the future look like? And I did a reflection at a point. I'm like, well, when I was in school, some people were country managers and they're still country managers. So, like, where's this leading, right? Because I don't think that I'll be able to build a house or buy a car with the salary that I'm making. Additionally, to I was like, see, as at 2017, 2018, I was thinking about why do I need to appear in, consulting rooms and talk to people? Can't I do this virtually? So that was just like yearn for doing things different. That's always been the drive. And so when I did my assessment, I was like, I'm not sure this is the space I would want to be in. First of all, I was conflicting with my own personal values of loving to innovate. And so, and I mean, it's normal. It's not the company is not my boss, and I think it's just the industry. The industry um, has this closed way of working, right? Nobody's willing to share, nobody's willing to collaborate. And that was just conflicting with my personality and my values. So I was like, you know what, I need to move out. So moving out, even that I did not have clarity. And I think that's one of the things I was talking about. You never see the path clearly. When I decided to move out of pharma, I said, okay, I want to go into tech, but I'm not sure. I wanted to go into tech because of the innovation stuff, but I'm not sure of the specific role. But at the end of the day, I want to work in a role where I'm able to use data to influence business decisions. So my purpose for going into my master's program, studying business analytics, was literally to come back to the pharma space and disrupt the pharma space, like find a way to use data to, make an impact. I got into my master's program, and then that was when I did a couple of informational interviews and discovered something like product management. And now I had to like look back again, this is me doing the whole long range, back range thing, and ask myself, have I, exhibited these skills in the past? I realized that yeah, I had actually, right? And so that was what got me into product management as a career. So my thing was two-tiered. One was more like doing something different, yes, but more like going into tech even without clarity, and then jumping into it and finding a lot of information and then learning on product management. And I would say, like looking back, most of the decisions that I've made in terms of my career has been more like what are the things, what are the jobs that I can fill that I can apply, its skills in everyday life. And I was doing that all the time. I had to convince my parents on certain things. I was selling to them. I was not just talking to them like a child, right? And so that's been my journey into transitioning from pharmacy into product management. In between, there was a lot of things. I started my company, went into recruitment, but definitely we can talk about that as we move along.
Yeah, no, that's my transition into product marketing is quite similar to, I guess, what Joel has described. You also used to be in sales, and I guess for me, um, like my personality is that I'm going to make a very nerdy reference. I like to be in the room where it happens, and this is a reference from a very nerdy play. But basically, I wanted to get into roles where I could influence strategy. And being in sales, like, yes, you have strategy for your account and you have strategy for your team if you become like a leader. But then I found out that marketing had far overreaching strategic components in the company that I was in. And I was like, oh, yeah, I want to do that, right? And it's those things where like your experience or where you are really influences what you think the world is, because it might be that my company had it in that way but other companies didn't. But that was my experience, that like, oh yeah, I want to determine what the sales team and everybody else does, so I want to go into marketing. And then being having the fact that I had already been a psychology major in undergrad, it kind of just fit in what I was studying back then, which is marketing and consumer psychology. So it's like one thing just kept leading to the other. And I also wanted to be in tech because I wanted to make more money. And I'm really not shy to admit that, because who doesn't, right? We come from Africa. And so like when you put those two things together, it was a very it was an aha moment that really happened over a few months, where I was trying to figure out, okay, where can I go? This is what I want to do. And you can hear that from everyone else's story, that there were a few things there, speaking to people in the space, figuring out what you wanted to do, what you wanted out of life, and using that to turn your life around in the direction that you wanted it to be in. But I feel like that's a good place to talk about then the job search space. I'm going to ask you this question, Joel, because I know that you were searching for work at the height of the remote boom, and you've also changed jobs at the middle of the economic downhillness. And so, can you like talk about the difference, right, at the beginning versus now? What the job search world looks like, and what you've done maybe to stand out or survive and thrive in that space.
Yeah, I mean, just to get a bit of clarity, when you say the beginning to now, are we talking about like me transitioning careers, like, I mean, not
Yes,
careers,
looking for work
transitioning jobs
then
last,
and looking for work last year.
looking for work then and looking for work last year? Yeah, obviously there was the hiring boom when the pandemic hit. A lot of companies were hiring, had all the perks and all the sweet stuff. And so, I mean, I rode that wave with clients. I'm a junkie, like I'm an execution junkie, and that meant that before I finished my masters, I was like, well, I'm going to be job searching. So I'm transitioning into a remote environment. Why don't I coach people to get into the space? Because I don't want to do any theoretical stuff. So I was pretty much easy at that point, and I saw certain trends too as well. Very technical talents, relatively easier for you to get into the room. So like if you're a software engineer, anything that involves coding and any of those deep geeky stuff, it's very easy for you to get into and get your foot in the door. compared to, and this is like even a baseline, right, back then, compared to operational roles, right? So, even beyond like product marketing and product, they're like all operational, like I'm being an HR in a tech company, right? You can be an accountant in a tech company. And I realized that when you're looking at the two, it was very easy for core tech teams to easily transition compared to like ops, because I mean, ops require a lot. And also, it takes a lot of will to want to transition into tech. So, learning the skills, applying the skills, and what. But then post that, right? So typically that cycle, it could have taken you like 3 months to get into a job. There are people that I coached, took them like literally seeing a job, applying for 3 months, offers in. And then now, like in when I was transitioning into my first role as senior product manager at Pharma, I literally did 9 months. So the first time I reached out to the hiring manager through a colleague who was working in the company was 9 months before I started the role. And it didn't even change even with my current role. So my current role, I had to start like 9 months before I got in. And the trends that I've seen is that now hiring has closed, there are more tighter protocols, AI is in the mix, improving efficiency for a lot of organizations, and they keep cutting the teams. I don't know if any of you saw the case where the director for AI in Microsoft actually was laid off. The whole director of AI, right, was laid off, and she posted it on LinkedIn and all of that stuff. So it is crazy out here, right? And now it's you'd have to do anything to stand out. I mean, maybe for me, standing out has always been my mantra, so I don't find it hard, doing that at all. And that means being persistent, having full grit, expecting the rejections, because the rejections are going to happen, and sometimes the rejections are based on perceptions, right? It's a perception game, like based on how they perceive you. Nobody really knows you. The recruiter, on the other hand, on the other side of the table, does not know who you are unless you come through a referral, but they just don't know you. And the biggest area of rejection will start, happens between submission and coming to the first interview or phone screening. You can have, like Jessica said, you can get 3% conversion and whatnot into an interview, right? And so it depends on a lot of factors. It's multifaceted. Your LinkedIn has to be good. Your CV has to be great. You should get a referral to jump that whole, rejection trench, right? You should find a way to jump that rejection trench by cold messaging, using referrals and whatnot. So I've seen that the core principles are still the same. One major differentiator here is people who have the grades are the ones that are getting in. I will say this: they are not the most intelligent people, they are not the most skilled people. They are the people who are most consistent and most persistent. And that's what I've seen from a coaching seat. I've seen to be the greatest differentiator between, then and now.
Yeah, I agree. And I can relate to that experience as well, because I just started thinking around when was the first time I reached out to my hiring manager for my first job at Oyster, and how quickly an offer came versus my current job that I just started this year. I reached out, I think, from October, and my offer came somewhere in December, right? Like it's way longer these days. And even then, you have to do so much to go from initial contact to offer, and that's why we really need to stand out. That's the only way that we can move forward. And that brings us to the topic of AI. So I'm not sure if any of us have seen this post, but if you don't follow Bonnie Debla from Zapier, you should probably do that if you're in the room. But Bonnie shared a post about how Zapier is an automation company that are doing really great work, but I love them because they have really good company culture. Um, Zapier now has AI requirements for everybody they hire, regardless of if you're coming to be an engineer, a recruiter, a salesperson. No matter what you're applying for, they have AI maturity levels that they expect of recruits. And that brings us to the question: how is AI showing up in hiring and in your day-to-day work? So I'll come to you, Dara, for that, because I know you manage teams, right? How is that how is that affecting hiring salespeople? Are you expecting people to at least have some AI knowledge? and how are you using AI tools day to day?
All right. Thank you very much for that question, Jess. So I feel like there's a lot of ways to answer that question, and I'll tell you. So, okay, from a recruitment perspective, right? Definitely, I would expect people to know how to use those tools, and a good number of them now have AI embedded in them. So it could be to optimize process and whatnot. So that's always a factor. However, there's also a way that I see people use AI that sort of deters me from moving them forward with the interview process. And I'm going to give you an example. So you take, for instance, a candidate. They craft their CV, their cold message, their cover letter, everything with AI, right? We want to definitely see the use of AI, but at the same time, that does not show authenticity. It shows a lack of originality and authenticity, and it just communicates laziness. So when I get that, right, that deters me. As much as I want candidates that are up to date, I think I'm more particular about candidates that know how to use sales tools and then can use AI within those sales tools. Because I think we sort of throw AI around a lot. A lot of people just throw AI around and just think it's one, but it's for a salesperson, for instance, right? You could have, or a BD person, you could even use Canva, because as a BD person, I use Canva to make my presentation slides or Keynote or PowerPoint. But Canva, for instance, is a very good example, right? So say I want to hire a business development rep and I expect that you can make certain pitches and presentations yourself. You can use Canva, that's great to know, right? But can you make your work faster by using the AI tool on Canva? Because that could even help you create your slides faster, shorten the time. It's that simple, right? Can you use ChatGPT well? There's a good way to use ChatGPT. There's a terrible way to use ChatGPT as well. So while I do want to see the use of AI, I think I'm more particular about people who are very open-minded to technical tools, because one thing I keep saying is that the tech stack is going to change. You know, the tool is going to change. And if you're a salesperson, the sales tool you're going to use in your company or the CRM tools you use in your company would vary. I remember when I was working at this company called Mono, we used to use Pipedrive, and Pipedrive was very simple, very straight to the point. You know, anybody could use Pipedrive without a training. And then I moved to a larger company where we were using Dynamics, Microsoft Dynamics, and it was just very stressful. You know, in fact, while they're onboarding you, you need to be trained on how to use the tool. So it wasn't about you knowing how to use the tool right there and then. It was about you being able to learn very fast, you know, how to use tech tools. So I think that's something I watch out for. But definitely, I believe that AI is creating a lot of opportunities while we're also seeing job losses. Because according to the World Economic Forum, you know, as of 2020, due to research or based on the research that they actually carried out, about 97 million jobs were created due to the emergence of AI, and at the same time, about 85 million jobs were lost. So I think one
That's
aspect exactly, it's very ironical about staying. Joel really dwelled a lot about staying relevant, and it's very important to stay relevant. And I always tell people, AI is not the enemy. You know, for a lot of people, AI is actually not coming to take your job in that sense, but it's coming to transform how we do work. AI is, in fact, transforming how we do work. So you need to get on board, know what tools to use, know how to use artificial intelligence within the tools you use, or even if they're artificial intelligence tools that are relevant to your field, you need to know how to use them. And then you also need to upskill so that you're constantly, ahead of the trend. There are things you can't control. You can't control a global recession. You can't control sometimes being laid off. You know, it's just a business decision. But you can control your skill sets, how good you are. You can control, you know, your learnings, what tools you decide to learn, or upskilling, or certification, or even your personal brand, how you put yourself out there, how you network. Those are things you can control. So you should work on. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I like the fact that you mentioned staying relevant because AI is here and inadvertently people are losing their work because of AI. Because I'm not sure if any of you are following the conversation on LinkedIn, but there's all these conversations about companies firing employees and using a bunch of AI agents for, for good enough.
I have an addition to that just to add. So Clasher, case in point, Clasher fired their customer support team, the entire customer support team, replaced them with AI. But guess what? They had to rehire humans. And they were, as of the last time I checked a month back, they were rehiring humans because AI is smart, but there's still some level of emotional connection and originality that we're yet to fine tune. So yeah, that's a very good example.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you for that. That's actually very relevant as well in the conversation going around now. And that actually brings me to you, Ima. So you have now survived two layoffs, I think, in
Yeah.
Malta. And unfortunately, I cannot say the same. But in the face of AI, where obviously people are losing their jobs, and even before that, the global economic recession was something that was on everyone's minds. VCs were investing less, which means that tech companies are taking decisions to reduce spend and save more runway by losing people. How are you staying relevant? What advice do you have for people who are trying to get into the space, to be able to say the right things or know the right things about staying relevant in the space? And how is AI also like playing into that for your work?
Uh, okay, so I use AI a lot personally in my workflows. Right. One of the biggest things that my manager advocates for most of the time is adaptability. And what does adaptability mean? So in the face of challenges, in the face of successes, how do you move with the times, right? So as a product designer, usually at startups, we expect you to be a generalist. You should be able to take the design of a product from the beginning, so understanding users, all of that, all the way to testing. You should be able to get from end to end in that, like through the entire process. And in the process of doing that, we have AI now that can do bits and pieces of these things. So now that you are faced with this, the question that you need to ask yourself is, if it comes a time when, say, for example, visual design is something that AI can do. So if it comes a time when they say, okay, we do not have resources to still keep those who are UI designers here, what will you do? You never worked on improving your user research skills. You never improved how you would speak to your stakeholders, your team members. You didn't learn to improve how you ideate around things. And all of these things are skills that you need to have to be able to thrive as a designer. So what you want to do is to make sure that through all of this, you are paying attention to developing yourself as a professional. You do what it takes to stand out. Joel said a lot about standing out. If that is participating in community work, you want to participate in community work, you want to contribute, you see questions online, you have answers to it, do respond. There you have your LinkedIn profile. Your LinkedIn profile is like your gateway to or it's like a preview into your entire career as a professional. You want to take advantage of that. The experiences that you've gathered up to the point of AI getting into the space. It's not something that should be thrown away. There are things that you picked up that can be transferred from that period into this period. And so you want to make sure that some of these things are things that you pay attention to, and then you can put them together. And now that AI has come in, you look at how you can take those skills, take what AI presents, and then you reimagine what work means or being a product designer means to you. And then you use that to set the pace for how the future of your work would look like, and then you start building from there. So for me, like this, I use AI for copywriting. I use AI to brainstorm on ideas. Like all of these things are things that you want to pay attention to. So the long and short of what I am saying is, while you get through the phase of AI and figuring out who you want to be, what you want to do, and make sure that whenever there are layoffs, you don't get affected. You want to make sure that outside, when people see you, they see someone who understands their work. You need to ask yourself, do you understand your work yourself? Yes. If you don't, then there is a lot to learn. Would AI replace me if I didn't pay attention to this and that? Yes. Then that means you have to go back and then go and learn these things so that I can add whatever, so that you can add whatever you AI brings to it, and then you build from there. So in short, what you want to basically do is to make sure that externally, what people see is good. When a hiring manager, a recruiter comes and then they come to your profile, what they come to see should make sense to them. It should be something that you yourself, you know that when you are asked questions, you would be able to answer because you've taken the time to work, to grind through, and then get to that point. So even if you get laid off and then you need to talk about your work, or you need to talk about work, it is clear to you, right? You know the things you did, and so you know what you can add to it to then grow. So basically, what you want to do is to make sure you are adaptable enough, and you are able to evolve in skills and then in principles and in foundation to be able to take what the future brings to what you have to be able to stand. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, essentially, what you're saying is be known for good work.
Yeah.
And if you're known for good work, like AI will not replace you. And I think that's true, because you can tell that people who are known for good work already, they're using the AI to do even better work, versus like people who are trying to get AI to do their work for them. It's very evident. You can tell when someone is using AI as like a sparring partner, a thinking partner, versus someone who is asking AI to please think for me, right?
Yeah.
That's a definite difference there. And I'm really glad because I've seen all of your slides, and I know that all of you are talking about AI in different ways in your workshop rooms. So don't worry, guys, it will be discussed even further in the workshop rooms.
And I want to add one last thing.
Yeah.
One last thing. So now that AI has come, it's like the only differentiating or the differentiating factor that as a designer you can have is your taste and your judgment.
Yeah.
So those two things are things that you want to improve, because AI would make it would level the playing field for everyone. Product managers can now quickly spin up apps in minutes. Good, like they look good. Best, you can do whatever you want to do with it. But if everyone can build apps like that, how do you gain competitive advantage? Or if anyone can design or can make apps to look like that, how do you gain competitive advantage and then stand out as a designer? Your taste, your judgments in design, your design decisions. Yeah. Those need to pay attention to those as well.
No, that's really good. I'm gonna let all of us go into the breakout rooms in the next few minutes. But there was a question that one of you put on your forms when you signed up for the webinar that I want to read out, and it's for Joel. It was, what are some practical ways to get product management experience as an entry level job seeker? And this is a really good question, because most of the time PMs have experience from some different field that they're really transitioning into PM with some level of experience, right? But this person is asking, if I'm entry level, what do I do?
Yes, I may have missed a bit of it, but am I hearing that if someone wants to go into PM with no experience, what do they do?
Yes.
Because typically PM is okay, great. So, and I was deciding on whether we should address that in the workshop, because PM focus.
That's true. The PM person will be there for you, so you can
higher level.
it.
Yeah. so
Maybe
that it
that's
saves
like
everyone's
a
time.
one line
High
version.
level. Yeah, one
And
line.
then
So
yes.
maybe the one line thing that I would give us a prelude is that for each role that you're trying to transition into, try and understand what the entry point is, right? Because based on the entry point, it would mean that you would have to get a bit of work done. So some of the roles you can go in like, entry level, you don't have any experience and all of that. Some of the roles are very high level and decision making roles, right? Which you would have to get in, at some level. But the bottom line is that there's always going to be the more strategic that the role is, the lesser the chance of having that entry level bridge.
Yes.
So there's something like associate product manager roles, associate product marketer roles, but trust me, those roles are very rare.
I
Very,
think those roles
very,
require
very
experience.
rare. See, they do require experience. They are very rare, right? But then there are cases where you see a junior designer role,
Yeah.
right? So you have to think through this. And the bottom line is that you don't need a 9 to 5 to build experience. That's what I'll end with.
Great.
You don't need to work in an office to build work experience. When I was transitioning into products, I realized my gaps and I started building money. I did not need permission. After getting rejections 1, 2, 3, I was like, nah, you can't sell your way into product management. You need to get your hands dirty. So for whoever it is, even irrespective of product, if it's any other role and you discover, oh, it's a role that requires this level of entry, then give yourself time to build that thing. I told myself I was going to take like 2 years to transition into a product manager role, and then I did that in 1 year, then found. So that's like where I put it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And Dara, I'm going to give you the chance to have like a final word, and then we will be breaking into our individual workshop rooms.
All right, great. So to double down on what Joella said, right? If you're looking to transition or break into tech sales, I think one thing is right. First of all, the barrier to entry for sales is a lot lower. Another thing is that you do not need to have worked in a corporate role or a 9 to 5 job to work in sales, right? For me, what I was able to leverage during my first interview that got me into the door was that I had worked as an entrepreneur. It was a small business, it was a small fashion business, but I knew how to sell. So it could be that, it could be just you being able to convince them that, hey, I've done ABCD. Oh, I sold this for my mom, or when I was in school I sold that, or when I was, you can leverage skills. I think there are skill sets that we get from other places that are not necessarily traditional workplaces that you could leverage to break into tech sales. Yeah.
Yeah. I think to summarize most of the things that have gone on in the discussion, be adaptable, learn AI, but don't let it replace your thinking. Do everything you can to stay relevant and stand out. And of course, whatever you're trying to enter, whatever space you're trying to enter, figure out what is the best entry point. It might be that you can build experience, adjacent experience, and move into it, or you might build experience not even in a 9 to 5 and be able to move into it. But for all that you do, make sure that you're staying relevant and staying up to date with the tools and the things happening around, because that's how you will be able to stand out and be strategic in your job search process. That's a really good place to end the panel discussion part of this.